Fun.
Hello, everybody. I'm really excited to officially start the very first workshop in this series, Seeds of Hope. And I'm really, really excited by the amazing lineup of speakers who have volunteered their time, expertise, and their heart to this. And who better to start our series than Louise from Evolve Yourself Institute? Hello, how are you?
Hello, it's so good to be here. Thank you so much, Letitia. What an awesome, I suppose, process and understanding and exploration, which I'm a bit of a fan of.
Yeah, and I think this is very much going to be a journey for everybody, even the other panelists. We were just hearing from Justine and myself. Like, I'm excited to learn through this as well, because I think we're always at the beginning of our journey, and we can always learn more and cultivate ourselves and all of that. So everybody who's on here, I really encourage you to use that chat box. It's there, it's been activated, so you can write in questions. Love to see you guys introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, maybe why you jumped on. I know a lot of people are feeling a great deal of stress and overwhelm at the moment, or confusion, or whatever emotions coming up, might be all of them. And I just want to say that you're in a safe place. I'm not going to force anybody to be engaged and involved. If you don't feel like chatting, that's fine. But I just encourage you to, as you feel more comfortable and whatnot, to just do that if you feel so, because if you have a question, chances are another person in the group has the same question, or you're going to help them by asking as well. So there's no such thing as a silly question. As we get involved, you know, we might encourage a couple of people to come onto the video side of things and share their vision, or their questions or case study we can work you through. Tomorrow's, so Friday's, the 30-minute Q&A. So tomorrow we'll jump on and you can ask any question you have, but again, also use that chat function today to ask questions. I won't talk too long because I want Marie to utilize the full as much time as possible, but I just wanted to thank every single one of you for jumping on. Holgrow is like a new venture for myself, and one that I'm really passionate about. And it is very much about bringing community together. And this being the very first webinar series that we've run, I think it's testament to the caliber of panelists that have volunteered their time to be part of this, for I guess testament to the values and the mission that we're trying to achieve and setting out, and how we're trying to help people. So I'm really honored that these guys have joined us. And Marie, I'd really love to hand over to you, and if you can share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then just dive in, so I can basically hand you the reins. If you need anything, I will be here, but I'm really excited.
Well, thank you, Letitia. It's a real treat to be here, and thank you so much, everyone, for turning up. It's awesome. I really would love for you to be my eyes and my ears, because in this experience, I'm not able to see people's face, or and even when I'm presenting, I won't be able to see what's written on the chat so clearly. So I would love that. Please, butt in if you need to, and that's all really awesome.
Well, I'll tell you now, Sarah Hope has introduced herself, and actually I'll share that Sarah Hope was the reason we're doing this today. Sarah shared with me, I was telling Sarah about Holgrow, and she's from Riverina Murray Destination, and I always get that title wrong. Sorry if I've got that title wrong, Sarah. But she was sharing a little bit about her experience, and I thought, let's help people. And her chat is what she's written. I work in Destination Riverina Murray. I knew I got it wrong. Her note says, I work in tourism and love the idea of this program, and looking forward to learning to help deal with stress and overwhelm from a holistic perspective, given the current stress life has on us all.
Wow. And Sarah, what a cool name you've got, Sarah Hope. It's so quite fitting right now, isn't it? Offering people hope. And no doubt I can imagine that that the tourism has really been affected, and the stress related stuff that's rising in the collective is really exposing itself, and not so beautifully, I suppose. So it's great to have you here, and wow, what a great instigator to explore with Letitia. It's awesome. And I hope you really do get a lot out of it, and I do believe you will, so it's awesome. Look, as Letitia has shared, my name's Louise, and I've been working in human development for 15 years, consciously, subconsciously, a lifetime. And different things, find yourself in these experiences. And it's been a real treat to have founded Evolve Yourself Institute together with a gorgeous business partner who we actually share nationwide and worldwide well-being solutions for the majority of frontline services, but then it's going into a lot of corporate sector for well-being solutions on a whole. And we're super grateful we get to do that. So it's really, really awesome to see these types of practices starting to be invoked in mainstream. And that's very, very exciting. So it's a privilege to be here. And today we're working on breath. Yay. Wow. I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'll just take you through some lovely things, lovely images. Hopefully you can okay, so today we're exploring the power of breath and its impact on the system. Now, the world is happening outside ourselves, and there's absolutely, it's really being, I suppose, what a lot of people feel like they're in a bit of a washing machine and not really knowing how to get out of it. And the gorgeous thing about these types of practices, when we consciously choose to bring them into our lives, we start exploring ways in which we can optimize our body mind to actually deal with the impact of the environmental influences. And I invite everyone just with me now for this moment to take a big, deep breath and take it down into your belly. And just expand your belly as you breathe in. Now, the beautiful awareness of the power of breath is that it actually serves every part of our central nervous system and our body mind functioning. Now, if I consciously choose to take a breath, I'm consciously telling my system it's okay. And too often when we're in different types of states, I suppose poked by our environment, we fall into short patterns of breathing. So today is all about optimization of breath, and our attention is invoking your awareness that you have the availability to regulate your system with a state of awareness first, and then choosing to make that breath all the way into your system. Today, we're going to have a look at why it is that it's important for us to do that. Now, we can all say that we can be very excited about our organization if we have our own business, if we are in our family unit, if we are walking out in the world. There's one common element that you bring to the table, and that's you. And you are the most consistent in every facet of your life. And the incredible story of really bringing in self-care as primary care is that when you are well, your environment has the potential to also be well. We can all ask the questions, like ask questions to ourselves, often when we're in a space of dis-ease, we fall into our environment looks really, really tense and in a space of dis-ease as well. And so the invitation here is to really bring our awareness into the fundamental root of any business is your well-being. Being well for an organization that wants to thrive requires well employees. And then you go, okay, well, how do we have well employees when we've got all of this noise going on in the world and being poked, pushed and prodded? It really is quite hard to do so when we find ourselves pulled into the mosh pit of dis-ease. But the gorgeous thing about attention or being curious about what it takes to really thrive is that our navigation can start looking. And the gorgeous thing about chaos, I kind of feel that the world has hit a little bit of a pimple pop of chaos in our environment. And we see that it invokes that chaos in our own system. But when we see the chaos, there's a beautiful, beautiful access at this point. And that is that we see the underlying issues that have probably been sitting there bubbling away. And when the chaos hits, the availability to make change is also invoked. And so when we begin to tune into practices for elevated living, we can start exploring what it takes to really thrive in a world where there is a lot of dis-ease going on. And primary care is probably fundamental as self-care. And to have a well body-mind, it requires a little bit of space from the dis-ease that's going on. When you're looking at a human organism or the ecosystem of a body-mind, for an organism to really thrive, it really loves going to its edge, and then so it expands and it contracts, expands and contracts. And when we're looking at ill health, or the majority of humans want to stay out of that yellow zone that you see on the screen, where it's, we don't want to get sick. We're happy to be in average health. But when you're exploring self-optimization, you start looking into certain practices and enhancement of your wellness solutions, and start looking at practices that elevate your well-being. And breath is one that allows us to come into our edge, expand, and then also like we're expanding our edge of our physical, emotional, psychological self. And then our normal gets broader and broader. And this little image that we have here is that we love to see a whole organism thrive. And that's taking into consideration all of the human. So it's taking into consideration our mental, our spiritual, our physical, and our emotional selves. Now, a lot of people especially in the Western model of last 200 years, have seen the mental capacity as separate to the physical, or the emotional capacity as separate to the physical. But you cannot, no matter what aspect of your journey you're on, there's no denying that when we feel emotional, it affects our physical. Just take a moment right now and remember when you felt angry. Yeah, there's a fire in the belly or a weight on the shoulders. There's a literal physiological response based upon an emotional state. And the same thing goes as the feedback loop into the dance of expression, is that the physical is affecting the emotional. And same goes with the psychological patterns. And the psychological patterns of what the body mind is used to will feed back into the field of the physical. And the physical feeds back into the psychological. So when we're looking after our physical aspects of ourselves, we start to see emotional harmony, not as easily triggered. Well, the same goes for your mental clarity. When you're allowing your mental growth to be in more, I suppose, states of equilibrium or coherence, you're enabling your physical expression to express itself more optimally as well. So when we're looking at these types of enhancers for all aspects of self to grow, well, we start grabbing tools that are really showing up to benefit the system optimally. And as expressed, breath is one of those things, because breath is the one that allows the organism to thrive. And so many times in the space of stress, whether it comes through a thought, a feeling, an emotional state, it goes into different patterns. And so if we start to choose to regulate our own patterns inside our body, well, then when we're able to regulate all of the aspects of this little ecosystem of mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual ways. And so as a fundamental elevator in a conscious breath practice, we're enabling the system to upgrade or move into spaces of regulation. Now, right now, we're seeing a lot of dis-ease in the world, right? So we're seeing a lot of people sitting in the space of average health. And then as soon as the stresses are so much, they sit on the edge, the balance of the ecosystem of the mind body falls into the panic zone and starts eating away at the cells. But I'll go into that a little bit more, a little bit moving forward. But just in this moment, have a little bit of a contemplation on when you feel the stress of an environment. Say there's someone says, well, you might be worried about when you're going to get your next work, or maybe things are changing in the world and you start thinking about something, it starts running through your thoughts. Well, then the system doesn't know the difference between its reality of things, or the inside is very much affected by the imprints of the outside. And so a thought comes in that, shit, I'm very worried about my work. Well, then the stresses on the body take a different shift, but your breath takes a shift. And so regulate, when we become aware of where our breath is in any given moment, we can start harmonizing through a conscious activation that I want my inner world to be okay, because we have no influence over the outside happenings, but we do have influence over the inside, because the outside happens. It's interpreted through the mind, picking up on all of the information that it collects. And then that interpretation shifts different patterns within the ecosystem of the mind body. I have no influence over what someone says, does, but I have absolute influence on how I regulate my inner world. And the more conscious we become of that, the more power we have and influence in the world in which we walk, which is very, very exciting and very empowering. So just let's look at breath practice, or breath in the history of man or human. And we can see that thousands of years ago that the ancient practice within the yogic practices of pranayama, prana meaning life force, and ayama meaning extension. And so those certain patterns that or systems in those ancient practices have really invoked in all of the practices which are coming alive into the modern world today. What we're seeing, you saw a massive surgence in the 70s around breath practice as a well-being solution, when Stan Groff was really doing some great stuff with holotropic breath work. Some of you might be familiar with Buteyko breathing, and we saw rebirthing come alive in the 70s, and the exploration of consciousness through that. It was just a real insurgence. But over the last 20 years, that practice is really coming alive through Patrick McCown's doing some beautiful work, Stig Severinsen through the lens of breathology. There's an incredible book, which was Breath Science. I think it's through James Nestor. And so if you want to explore more of what we do today, we actually use breath as one of our fundamental pillars in optimal practices for wellness. And that's using these types of practices to enable the human to live elevated life experiences. But this insurgence of breath practice as a conscious activation is really coming alive because of the power of it, the power of the practice to be able to sustain life and create a well life, an optimal life, and a thriving life couldn't be more paramount in today's situation, because my influence over the outside world can feel quite debilitating, but the influence over the inside world for a thriving organism is in my power. And we're seeing these incredible breath practices being used for trauma in great spaces of universities, for intelligence, for optimal performance, for to relieve PTSD. Even the military are engaging in a lot of breath practices for a process of incredible grief. And there's some research out there which is showing up that it's 100% successful in moving PTSD in very controlled processes and activations of breath control. And this is very, very exciting. But I bring it always back to that the evidence is in the experience. You know, I can learn how to drive a car through a book, but until I'm in that car, I have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah, and I'm bunny hopping all the way down the street. But what's inspiring is that when we embody these practices of breath, meditation, reflection, all of the great tools that are really showing up to be juicy, we're seeing the evidence speak for itself within the person, and the person being me, the person being you. And it excites me and invigorates me to really see that. In the chat, Letitia, if I could just invite people to maybe share with us as to where their breath goes when they are feeling stressed, where they feel, do they feel they're coming into their chest, or is it down into, they stop breathing? You could even have the experience of stopping breath. Now, there's a big thing in our education that is primary, is that when I understand my inner functioning, I might be able to utilize my function. Now, it's a bit like having an iPhone, and I've got this incredible iPhone. It can do amazing things, but I only need to know the basic fundamentals of its functioning, and then I can actually, use it without being used by it. But what we see, and what we share with thousands of people we've educated around the world, is that people on a collective level really don't understand their functionings on the inside of their body. And we invite that, imagine if we can understand basic functioning in the system, then we're able to maybe utilize it so it's optimal. That's exciting.
Just Sarah, Marie, we've had a couple of people respond. I went first with chest for me, and I definitely stop. Sarah said chest and hands. Someone else said chest with extreme stress and hyperventilate. Another one, Simone, throat restricts and either shallow breath or stop. Gina, chest and can't breathe. So yeah, everybody's definitely experiencing it.
Oh, it's amazing. And it's a real, what the beautiful thing is about this is, as soon as you become aware and attention on the body's physiological limitations through the trigger of fear, well, that's starting to break the feedback loop that has created it. So high five everyone for recognizing those limitations within the system. And it's a real invitation to begin that attention on the physiological responses. That's why body awareness is a really cool tool to get us engaged in our system. What I wanted to bring alive here was, if I know a little bit about how my body's functioning, well, then I'm able to maybe, I suppose, utilize it. And over on the left, the picture on the left, you can see that what we've got is our brain, and then we've got our brainstem, which runs down our spine, yeah? And that incredible organism, when it's operating in full function and harmony, it's able to grow limbs. Incredible, right? So when you were born, you came out of your mother's womb, and the next thing you know, you were growing limbs. You did not have to tell your organism to grow. And what did it take? It took a full belly breath. The belly, when it's breathing into the tummy, it actually allows that central nervous system to optimize and grow limbs. It is an incredible piece of technology. It's an intelligence that you cannot build. It's an attempt through artificial intelligence, but the organism is actually regenerating, renewing, and restabilizing in coherence to its environment. So the beautiful thing is that I'm aware that my pineal and pituitary gland, my thyroid sitting in my throat, my thymus around my heart and lungs, my adrenals cleanse out all the food and toxins, my sexual organs are thriving. Now, when my body is thriving, it's breathing, it's allowing itself to regenerate and renew. And how is it that it regenerates and renews? It breathes into its belly, just like the baby is when they're born. Now, those patterns within the system that have fallen into an organism that has optimally grown the neocortex, which is incredible piece of technology. It's an amazing thing. It thinks of the future and remembers the past. And the very technology of being able to do that has started to debilitate and fall into patterns of these guys over on the right. Yeah. So when we're highly functioning and allowing our organism to thrive, we are allowing it to breathe into its belly, and we're allowing it to regenerate and renew. We're expanding outside our comfort zone often, and we're finding our edge but then we're recalibrating, and recalibrating. Now, what happens with the beautiful gift of the fight-flight response is that it enables the safety to be enabled within the organism, yeah? And so that safety allows the organism has experienced a threat. The threat comes, we look at any mammalian, I suppose, counterparts, and you'll see the threat happen and the fight or flight response is triggered. So a threat, the fight or flight response is triggered, the cortisol and adrenaline is released, double pumps our heart, energy runs to our hands and feet, and that falls into a pattern, a very deep pattern of the distribution of cortisol, distribution of adrenaline, fight or flight responses happened, double pumps our heart, energy runs to our hands and feet, gets us into safety, beautiful, it's an amazing reflex. But what happens with the developed mind is that it has the availability to remember and think of the future. So then that falls in, makes it fire and wire into those. I wonder if I do that. No, it's fine. I was seeing if I, oh, sorry. I was seeing if I could, oh, excuse me. What's happening? I can't. I'll just go back into the share. It's not letting me. Okay, there we go. Perfect. So what happens in the fight or flight response? You can ask yourself, if all the energy is going to my hands and my feet, double pumping my heart and releasing cortisol and adrenaline in conversation, what parts of my system is no longer working? What do you think it is? All of your other stuff, like your sexual organs, your adrenals, your thymus, your thyroid, your pineal and pituitary. And when they are operating in harmony, they allow the organism to flourish. But the developed capacity of this incredible mind of ours remembers and is ignited by those feedback loops that fall into patterns of stress and overload. Now, I only have to think of something with my neocortex. Yeah, I think of worry, oh, it ignites the fight flight response on a very subconscious level. And every pattern that you have created in your time of history and time of space starts collating in the body's memory. And so that body's memory, cellular memory, remembers that ripple or the feedback loop and constantly feeding the body's organism the fight flight response. So when I use my evolved brain imagining the future of worry, I trigger it subconsciously. But I might not look stressed because I've engaged my social optimization and I don't look stressed, but my body is firing and wiring into the rhythms of stress and dis-ease. Now, if it's double pumping our heart, we have so much stress-related illness today. Our energy is running to our hands and our feet. Who has sexual organs? You know, where maybe there's a lot of women's issues. We've got gut health. The gut health is a major issue. Now, when all of these, the heart and lung disease, thyroid, now we've got a vagus nerve, which is connected to the whole of this organism and connects to all of these glands. Now, if we are in fight, flight response too long, chronically, we start, I suppose, creating a less optimized vagus tone. And if we have an optimal vagus tone, we can regulate quicker. We can self-regulate quicker. So someone says something to us that's created the shift in our body functioning, and we feel it in our body. If we have great vagus tone, we can start to regulate. And not so sticky are those words that someone said yesterday. How many times do we watch television? Stress and disease is on the television. It ignites the sympathetic system, which invokes the fight or flight response, which invokes the collapse of all of these other organs. It does not get the energy it requires for optimal health. But the good news is, there's good news. The science has today's understanding around the central nervous system and optimization and the vagus nerve and all of those things. What is really awesome is that conscious breath practices when we're off the field, we call that, when I'm off the field, that is when I'm in a safe home environment. I'm off the field. Then I go out into the world and it might be a lot of triggers in my environment. And so that's when I'm out in the world. When I'm off the field, I have the ability to practice habits that serve my body mind. And then if I can practice that's great. So connected to my computer.
Sorry, just while you're sorting that out, one thing that popped to mind when you were talking about that, Marie, is right now, with so many people in lockdown, home isn't even a safe environment for them. Like, there are so many triggers having to balance work, children, homeschooling, partners, all that other stuff. So is that fair to say, like, people's homes aren't feeling like that safe zone anymore? If people do want to comment and just reflect on that, because people who are in domestic violence situations or any kind of trauma, that might be a reality.
Absolutely, it is. And your body goes into a state of fight or flight as soon as it's doing stuff that's not your normal. Whenever it's in the not normal for you is when it will get into it kind of expands a little bit further outside your comfort zone. And if it goes too far, it goes into the panic zone, which is then the panic zone being the fight flight response. And coming back to your home environment has changed. Some people in the domestic violence world are experiencing their home environment as the most war zone.
We just had someone comment just on that. It segues into what you were saying. Ardale just commented, lockdown was the final straw in leaving the ex-husband. He was escalating and there was no break from the constant barrage. So that office used to be that space and that chance to recharge. So yeah, we are seeing that statistically. The amount of divorces or filings are definitely going up as well.
I just want to take a big deep breath in that, and if everyone could breathe with me and just take a breath into your belly and really offer your belly some space. And do me a favor and just allow the breath to come out with a noise in your throat. So breathe into the belly. Now, as soon as I do that, I have switched on my parasympathetic system and I've told my body that I'm safe. And congratulations, and I'm not sure, was it Laura who left her unsafe zone and really chose another path. And now what the beautiful thing about conscious breath practices is that we're enabling our power to come back into the system. Because living on tender hooks chronically, whether it be through the influence of what we hear, what we listen, what someone does, whether it be through a fist or an emotional abuse, or even the feeling of not knowing what I'm going to do tomorrow, it is not serving the ecosystem of your power, where the organism thrives. So the beautiful thing is that when I breathe into my belly, and then I switch on my parasympathetic system, which allows the regenerative and renewal processes to activate. Often in extreme, a person goes into fight-flight response, and if they are in a space of unsafe zone, they'll go into a space of freeze. And so a subjective experience for Louise was definitely her body freezing without her knowing, okay? And so the more that I became aware of my reflex of freezing, the more I was enabling myself to choose another path. Because that's when I start to rewire my patterns in my systems that were my normal at one point. That's very exciting. So the unsafe zone where kids are in your back of you while you're doing things, or you might be with your partner working in the same ecosystem at home, and you're trying to get your job done and you can't get it done, and a lot of noise and distraction. There is an awareness that it is 100% your responsibility to find the space to do these types of practices, to regulate your system. There is no time like now to go inside, not just inside your home, because I have no power over what's going on in the world, and it's something really, really to stress out. Now, for the beautiful lady who has chosen to leave her unsafe environment, so she's just got hit the fan, I've got to leave. She's taken herself away. Now it's in her power to start regulating the system. She's in a space of safety. And too often our mind is creating the war zone. The very organism that is enabled to have an incredible mind that can think of the future and remember the past is becoming our deficit, because we get locked in patterns that are triggering the fear response. And this is where the great gift of self-reflection comes in handy. It's definitely one of our pillars, to reflect on patterns that serve, and it could be patterns of thought, patterns of feeling, patterns of sensitivities, patterns of relationships. It's gorgeous that the realization that that relationship is no longer serving the ecosystem of wellness. Well, let me get out safe and now regulate. And in the space of feeling uncomfortable in your own home, well, get yourself in the toilet. Start breathing in the toilet. I mean, no one wants to go in there with you. You got this incubus in your toilet, and breathe into that belly. And we're going to do an incredible breath practice with you. But right now, I just want to show you that the central nervous system is able to optimize. And if I go back to that image here, if this is in harmony, it's able to regulate and renew and regenerate. If all of this stuff is playing out over here all the time, we're going to see wherever your body, mind, wherever your ancestral patterns, whether it be heart disease, mental health issues, wherever they are vulnerable is exactly where they'll show up if this guy is on play on autopilot. Yeah?
We had a couple of questions, if that's okay,
Please,
Marie.
I love that.
So when you got us to do that collective breath, I made a comment that it instantly made me feel like crying. And Ardale, sorry, don't know what your first name is, so I'm just calling you Ardale, asked, why does that deep breath bring on tears?
And Let's breathe again.
It's Ren, by the way. She just messaged in.
I love that. Well, the tears of nature is in alignment with you. The beautiful, what happens with the body is that the information held in the body that's been collected in different patterns. I'm not sure if you can see, I really would have loved to have had drawings because I love drawing. Oh, maybe I can. Oh, stop it. Okay.
We can see the marker, or at least I can.
Oh, stop it. This is very exciting. So if I can draw. Okay, so I often love to, as I educate, I love to draw. So when we fall into patterns of stress, yeah, the river or the neural pathway becomes automated as a reflex. All of these, when you're born into a healthy body, when operating in full function, has formed to a rhythm that when it was, now it's supposed to be very beautiful, a nice little rhythm pattern, that one is, but it isn't. But that's fine. It's when that is in a rhythm with its natural expression, it grows limbs and is really beautiful. Now, what happens is that when we have the stress response, when we're impacted emotionally, patterns in the neural feedbacks fire and wire very quickly. So when emotion is behind it, the clusters of unoppressed energy are held in the body. That's why somatic processing is incredible to release the old stuff that we've collated in our system. So say, for example, you were a kid and you're looking out into the world and someone said, you're an idiot. Boom. Hits you here and you go, your breath stops. Yeah, your breath stops and emotion was present. So the breath stopped, emotion is present, and it does trigger your edge. So it's kind of like a subtle fight or flight, like we've got it over here. And then that pattern becomes the normal because emotion was present, and the I suppose reflex of that neural network and that neural pathway fires and wires into the rhythm that it knows. And that's why whenever someone is trying to change a habit or a reflex, it can be really hard. You know, you've got to practice, you've got to practice, you've got to practice. And a lot of people can practice mentally, but the information is held where? In the body. Just like when I was learning how to drive the car, it didn't become automatic until it was in my body. And those patterns stay in the body. And the energy that is held within the system, when we offer it in this moment of space, and let's all do it together. Because that energy is wanting to be expressed. Okay. So when we give it the space, we start taking away these energetic patterns within the system. And that might just be, you need to cry. There's nothing wrong with crying. The human today has feared emotion over ancestral crap, yeah? So ancestors of not wanting to express their emotion because it didn't look good. You might have had to hold your face together. You might have had to experience, look, you know, I'm strong and I can. And the amount of times that in those moments that you really did want to cry, yeah, so you wanted to cry, but the reflex, you had to be strong in that moment. Well, it doesn't allow that emotion or the energy of that emotion to release itself, and it gets held in the body. And so when we do offer it space, we allow it to fall away. Now, just coming back to a full functioning organism, you take a dog or an animal or any type of animal that we have in the world, if you see the fight or flight response in them, after they are safe, you will more than likely see them shake and release the adrenaline and the cortisol from their body so that they can regain, regulate, and qualify into a normal harmonic system. But the human mind, the developed capacity of the mind, the one that, is thinking of what other people think, not good, whether we look stupid, where we can't shake, we've got to hold our shit together. Well, it doesn't allow the release of those energies. And so when we have experienced heightened spaces of collective trauma or even energies, when we offer ourselves the space, we start untangling those knots. And the images might arise in a mind. This is where PTSD can really rise through these types of practices, where images might come out. But if you know the foundational breath to allow you to move through it, you're enabling your system, the one that knows how to grow limbs, to self-regulate, harmonize, and work at its optimum. Those images do not need to dictate to you. Those rememberings do not need to dictate you. And then your new automatic becomes one of harmony. Does that make sense?
So two of the questions that are pretty similar from Renate and Justine was that is taking that deep belly breath in situations of high stress, like interviews or whatever, and that mental fog or the haze that happens. Yeah. From what you're saying, by doing that belly breath, it will create that space, slow it all down, and allow you to, I guess, just focus and be present and calm all of that down. So if you can get into that practice of doing that belly breath when you're experiencing those triggers, and from what you're saying, it's practice.
Without a doubt. You see, the incredible thing about momentum and the energy of momentum, you've already psyched yourself up for going into a job interview. Yeah. Your body's already in the reflex of being really scared. Yeah. And so when we're scared, it is very, very hard to operate out of our higher functionings. And our higher functionings is more complex, it's more diverse, it's more dynamic. It's really enabling the organism to think in coherence. So absolutely, taking that breath into your belly, you are telling your body you are safe and you're okay, and your functioning in your brain might be able to turn up to that job position at its best. But you can't underestimate the power of momentum. If the body's held a lot of repetitive patterns and that energy's got a lot of perpetuation, well, that's why practicing before you go into that job interview, wherever you're in your uncomfort zone, prior to going in, that, I'm outside my comfort zone, so I'm going to do and regulate my central nervous system. Well, then I have more grasp on it when I walk into that room. And the momentum of energy is not moving as quick. Does that make sense?
Simone just asked, she said, Brene Brown podcast with Emily and Amelia Nagoski on burnout and how to complete the stress cycle is amazing and made all this make more sense for her. And the learned patterns is making sense, but her question is, can we change them permanently?
Absolutely. Without a doubt, you can, like you learned how to drive the car, and it becomes embodied in the system. And that's why when we take on a conscious breath practice as a training modality, we have just become masters at this response over here to the right. We are masterful at the stress response. So if we would like our autonomic system to work at its optimum, number one is that it requires regeneration and renewal. It requires that. It goes into expansion and then it contracts, just like your breath does. And the same with the organism. That is exactly why the technology is enabled through the higher brain functionings. And so, but the higher brain functionings have actually caused this function of the fight flight response to be on all the time. And so bringing the availability alive that you have the capacity to regulate your system consciously, rewire, reframe, and redesign the reality that you experience primarily inside. Imagine your system being able to show up at its optimum through choice, through the practices that you developed, through the processes of remembering what you already innately know how to do. But the autonomic system has been screwed over a little bit because of the optimization of the mind. And so the science is really rising in all of this, and that's basic seeing. But if I really come back to the other image there, it's going to be doing more than those things. And in the experience of releasing trauma, in my own experience of actually releasing trauma through conscious breathing practices, and I mean a very deep exploration through that, where images rise of past experience, not only through the own experience of this lifetime, but, you know, the ancestral cellular memory, absolutely imploding it, and then allowing the system to regulate, harmonize, and regenerate. And that full circle that we're talking about of releasing the energy that no longer serves us. And the organism itself is an intelligence that you cannot underestimate. It's beautiful.
I'm going to just quickly interject. We're at the 1:30 mark. So just, we can keep going, but I just want to let everybody know, if you have to jump off, that's fine. But if you can stay on, like, would love you to. So just wanted to bring that awareness to the time, but I'm happy to go. I keep going. We'll keep recording this. And I just wanted to acknowledge that time.
Well, apologies for going over time. Just, you know.
No, this is amazing. Like, I don't know about anyone else. This is like, for me, just, I think what Simone was saying, it's helping a few other things that I've learned in the past land a bit more. And so, yeah, it's really powerful. So exciting. Yeah. Thank you.
Very powerful. What, to understand a full belly breath, now you can look at yourself when you do breathe, and you might lift your shoulders. Yeah, you're using your upper body to allow the breath to come into your tummy. But when you were born, you breathed into your belly and it came up into your chest. So your diaphragm actually allowed your stomach to expand. And you can see on Kerry here, as her breath comes into her belly, it rises and then it moves into the chest. Yeah. That's the optimal space of breathing for your central nervous system to do what it's born to do, and that is regenerate and renew. Now, this particular breath looks simple, but if you gave it 5 minutes a day, you will start to rewire, refire those innate qualities of the intelligence that lies at its center. And that is powerful. It's powerful. You don't have to tell your gut to take away the toxins. It will do it. You don't have to tell your heart to pump. It will come back into a homeostate, like an equilibrium of what is required at that time. Now, someone might go into a little bit of nervousness or panic when they start to breathe properly, because their body mind is so used to breathing not optimally the other way. Yeah. And so the normal for that person might go, but give yourself 1 minute, give yourself 2 minutes, then build your practice. The micro moments of modification allows you to bring it alive in the life in which we experience on a daily basis. If I'm being poked environmentally, and now is we're being poked environmentally, the human consciousness is in a state of fear as a collective. Now, if my body mind's tuning into that fear, well, my body's going to go into fear. Hey, but I say, because I have only power over this organism, I choose otherwise. What can I do? And I breathe into my belly. Now do me a favor, everyone, and breathe into your belly, open out through your belly and exhale. Now, if you want to switch on really support, especially those who've experienced deep trauma, when you've experienced deep trauma, your cognition, your polyvagus nerve switches on, and then it's really affected the tone in the voice. It's affected a lot of facial recognition. It's affected higher cognitive processes. But as soon as I engage in that throat, I'm consciously telling my body I'm safe, regenerate, and renew. It's powerful stuff, really powerful. I was going to take us through just a moment of this. Do we have space for it, or will we call it quits?
No, keep going. And I guess that's why we're recording. So if anyone does have to go, then they can jump back on and catch up at their own leisure. But yeah, let's definitely keep going.
Amazing. Okay, so this particular breath practice, the belly breath, falling into a rhythm where we're using our visual. Here we're going to use our visual, and as we breathe in, we breathe into our belly, gets to the top of the stairs, and then we exhale. Now, when you're exhaling, you bring your stomach back into, it's like someone punches you in the gut, okay? So someone punches you in the gut, your belly button contracts to your spine, okay? So breathing in, you might want to put your hand on your chest, your left hand on your chest and your right hand on your stomach. And it's so often a lot easier to do when you're laying down, especially if you are under the automatic response of just breathing into your chest. A lot of asthmatics will breathe into their chest, take a big deep breath. And I can't underestimate the power of also breathing through your nose. Okay, so it really does change your facial structure as well, and it really does support oxidation and, I suppose, cleansing through the system. So just everyone bringing their left hand onto their heart and your right hand onto your belly, and just taking a big deep breath in and exhaling on the downward ball. Inhale, exhale. Expanding through the belly as you inhale, and drawing your belly in as you exhale. Allowing your parasympathetic system to turn on. Consciously telling your body that you can regenerate and renew. You breathe it in and you exhale. When I practice this when I'm in non-conflict times, and it could be on the toilet, you're enabling that to become your auto rhythm. And you can all put up your hand to say that you've experienced a lot of stress over recent times. This is an amazing switch. It's an amazing switch. Now, if you feel like crying, that's what your system wants to do. And that's okay. You just keep coming back to your breath. If you feel any pain in your body, that's okay. You just allow your system to do what it's born to do. You breathe it in and you release. Just take one more breath and release. And just tune into your body's awareness now and feel where it is. Does it feel different? Do you feel less tense in your body? Allow yourself to really become aware of its power. Now, we have given you, there's another breath that I won't go into that, but I invite the space of really being curious about energy enhancers and the practice of conscious breathing if anyone wants to, I suppose, explore it more deeply, please come and play with us. You want to learn how to release your own trauma, come and play with us. And ask yourselves the question, where am I now? You deserve your own attention, and there's an amazing array of a body of knowledge to be learnt for your own understanding of your own inner world. And so it's very, very exciting time to be moving into those types of optimal practices, optimal habitual processes, and recognizing that you do not need to live in overwhelm. And I find that very, very exciting. Over you've got a couple of PDFs to download, and I highly recommend. We did, generally speaking, I suppose, in different types of ways of delivering different programs, we get the space of call and response, so we get to really engage that process. But the idea is to invoke and invigorate questioning for yourself in your own discovery, okay? So when you recognize you can rewire your body-mind through choice, or you might just start to rewire through vent practices that elevate your life rather than tuning into those attentions that limit it. And that's very, very exciting. So when we use the tool of reflection, and you'll see it on these PDFs, print them out, I highly recommend them. There's some, I suppose, questioning to utilize for your own awareness in recognizing where you hold limitation in your body and where you're limiting your own breath. You're not allowing it to work optimally. So I just want to, I suppose, invoke curiosity around that. So I hope that over the next 7 weeks, you really do, get inspired about your own power rather than being pushed around in life. That's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a question from Deanna, if we'll smash through that quickly. I heard that breathing through the nose engages the parasympathetic nervous system, whereas mouth breathing engages the sympathetic fight or flight system. Is that correct?
They're very closely linked, yes. And so the vagus nerve, which talks to, it's called the wandering nerve. It's connecting to all of your central nervous system. And you can just do me a favor, and when you get scared, so just think about when you get scared, yeah? You get scared, you might hold your breath, okay? And that holds it straight in your throat, doesn't it? Like, or if even when you get excited, yeah, it holds it in the throat. And that there's that polyvagus nerve, which connects straight down into your groin. That conversation that happens as a reflex, as soon as it's ignited, it's freezing us. And so as soon I suppose the cleansing processes that are happening through the nose, because when you were born, you were breathing through your nose, unless you had issues when you were born, the central nervous system is thriving. When I gasp, yeah, of course, it has a close linked relationship to the fight or flight response, just because it's the neural network that fires together, wires together. And so, yeah, they definitely, for sure, you're all over it.
There's a couple of comments on here from people saying, amazing session. Thank you. Already feel calmer, going to start sort of implementing this straight away. And yeah, definitely. I know that's that vocal one on that, you know, touching that vagus and having that release, because quite often you want to express how you're feeling, but it's not always appropriate. But that is sort of like a vocalization and release of being able to express that emotion and get it out. So I think that's a really powerful one for me personally. So if anything else resonated with you guys in terms of, you know, a key takeaway, pop it in the notes. But I think that's really powerful. So thank you for sharing that.
No, that's a pleasure. It's a real treat to be here, and I hope that we all got something out of it. So it's so awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I encourage you all to jump on and follow Evolve Yourself Institute. I think your handle was, I think you just had it up, EYI Global is your handle for Insta.
Yeah. Evolve Yourself Institute. Come and play. For sure.
Yeah, follow them, sign up to their newsletters. Their newsletters are really interesting. I read them, and full of awesome content. But of course, we'll be meeting again tomorrow for 30 minutes to have a little Q&A, have another little play, and we can catch up on anything. Maybe you guys will get an opportunity to put this into practice on the toilet. By the way, the toilet isn't always a quiet zone when you have a toddler.
No, that's very true. Oh, gosh, discover one. I tell you, what is it for you?
I don't know what it is. Like, I was sitting on the toilet last night. He came in and I just looked at him, closed the door very softly, and the next minute I'd broken his heart. And of course, then I'm on the ground trying to fix that. So, you know, it's a practice. So yeah, I think it'll be really exciting to put this in and play with it. And, you know, one thing I actually meant to do at the beginning of this, which is fine, maybe set an intention for yourself around this. So when you do start feeling it in your hands and your throat and your, you know, that whatever your trigger is, just sort of, you know, what would you recommend in that space when you start feeling it come on? Just immediately do your belly breath and just like get into that practice to put it down there. And
yeah, look, it's one thing to say that we're going to do it, but in the reflex of momentum, it's often very, very hard. And that's why creating habits of health, of optimal processes, when we're not engaged with the stresses of life, when you go to bed, just promise yourself that you're going to do 10 minutes of it. Because when momentum, the energy of momentum is encapsulated, it is a very, very hard to disengage from momentum. So give yourself a break. There's a lot of things that, you know, we do, but there's one thing is that real self-love, self-kindness, and self-compassion, in that you're not always going to be able to disengage and cut yourself off. But that belly breath, as soon as you recognize in your physiological state that you are elevating into that state, if you can, the sooner you capture it, the sooner you will see your regulatory system unfix it. It really, it's an amazing, it seems like such a simple practice, but if you can nail this one practice in your life, it will change your life forever, and you'll be able to impregnate it into every facet of your life. And that is powerful, whether you're dealing with kids. Talk about a kid crying on the floor. Your stress response is ignited in that experience, because when you see a child go through pain, especially your own, you go through it as twice as much as they do. And your organism then starts mirroring to your children. And then the mirror, the feedback loop in that is another story.
Yeah, they pick up on you, and it's like cyclical.
So yeah, it's a real invitation, especially if you've got kids, you know, just bring it alive, you know.
And then we can teach them. And imagine the future generation, if we can start teaching our children these practices now at an early age, what kind of future leaders we're going to have. We won't be yelling in the Senate like they do. But anyway, I digress. It's a whole other subject. Look, we'll wrap up, but thank you everybody who jumped on and stayed on. I know we've gone over, but I really didn't want to cut that short. We'll see you tomorrow for the Q&A. Like I said, in the meantime, jump on, follow EYI.global, follow Whole Grow, jump on the platform download that worksheet, have a play with that and practice this, set that intention. Don't be hard on yourself when you don't get it, because it is a practice, and you know, we're all learning. So thank you so much, Marie, for everything. You're such a special creature, such beautiful energy. So thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow, and of course looking forward to the next few weeks with all of you, and hopefully see you all again tomorrow for the Q&A, and if not, next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.